Did you have a fun time out at the lake?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good time, huh? That was awesome. It just kind of, really, summer is like gone.
Yep. Ice fishing next week.
Want to remind you of the Bible study Wednesday night. The lesson this coming week is God speaks to everybody, or just everyday people, should I say, through design and circumstances. It's been just a series. It's the 5th week of how God speaks to you, and last week was just really awesome, because we've all, I think at times, just kind of wondered how. I hear people say God speaks to them, but how does He speak to me? And it was wonderful. So I encourage you to be a part of that. 6:30 Wednesday night. Bring your coffee cup. Man, we had lots of goodies there last week. We had so many goodies you wouldn't even have to date supper. I mean, it was really nice. Praise the Lord. I think that's everything I need to share. I'd like to get into the Word. I'm going to talk about Moses today. So we're going to begin by Acts 7:22, and then we'll go to Numbers 12. So Acts 7. Acts 7 is actually a record of Stephen's defense. It's his last sermon that he preaches. He's going to be the first martyr of the church. And so this is a part of his dissertation. And he says in verse 22, and Moses was educated in all the learning of the Egyptians. I understand one of the great libraries of history was in Alexandria. It was ultimately burned. But it was an incredible library. Have you ever been online and went to the Library of Congress? You can actually go online and access stuff on the Library of Congress. That's an incredible library. Moses was educated in all the learning of the Egyptians. He was an educated man, and it says he was a man of power, both in words and deed. Okay, so let's go over to Numbers, the 12th chapter, and we're going to read verse 3. Then we're going to come back ultimately to chapter 7 of Acts. But Numbers 12:3 says, now the man Moses was very humble. Some of your translations say he was a very meek man. He was one of the meekest men that ever lived. Meek, mouse. I don't know, we associate it sometimes with weakness, right? The NIV says he was more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth at that moment in time. So I'm trying to take in, these verses don't seem like they fit. And there's another verse that we'll eventually get to that doesn't seem like it fits what we read with, there in the book of Acts. It's like if you're trying to get these two to mesh. I mean, on one hand, here is this man there was a Roman historian. He was actually a Jewish Roman historian called Flavius Josephus. Some of the quotes are out of the Antiquities. You can actually look it up online. You can actually buy the material. He has a 20-volume work. We know the story of Moses, and some of what I'm going to draw is going to be drawn out of not only the Word, but out of this historian. We know the story. I mean, there was a great famine in the land during the time of Jacob. And, let me back up even before that. He had a son, Joseph. And Joseph was his dad's favorite. You have kids that you connect with and kids that you don't. And he was his favorite. And his older brothers were jealous. And so one day he was kind of like the ranch. He went out to check on his brothers out on the ranch. And the brothers about had enough, and they threw him into a pit. They were going to kill him. Ultimately, they sold him to some Midianite traders. He ended up on an auction block in Egypt and sold as a slave. And Potiphar bought him. Things were going along pretty good. Then he got a bum rap by Potiphar's wife. She accused him of attempted rape, and he was thrown in prison. And we learned that all of this was a journey that God had sent him on. Ultimately, while in prison, he interprets a couple of dreams. Pharaoh himself has a dream. One of the guys that had a dream interpreted, remembered. The story is that he interprets Pharaoh's dream. He becomes actually the second in command in all of Egypt, a world power of the day. He'd be like, Vice President Pence. He was the second in command. Egypt, as a world power, they had a lot of military exploits. And as most empires of that day, they brought slaves back. If they conquered, it was workers for their projects. And Israel itself began to grow. From 70 souls to 2 million people. Can you fathom that? I mean, history in the United States is, not quite 300 years, and we're over 300 million, or right at 300 million people here. So Israel was about 2 million people by this time. And so here's these Hebrews, and 2 million of them, and then all of these various slaves. And the Egyptians got afraid. They thought, man, if they ever collaborated, got together, they could overthrow us. And so they come up with a plan, and the first plan was they would conscript them. They would become slaves. The Hebrews would be slaves as well. And we know the story there. And slavery was a little fierce, and they still proliferated. They still grew. And so Pharaoh said to the midwife, "You kill them male babies when they're born." And that didn't stop the growth. The midwives had compassion. All of you girls, you love babies, huh?
We do.
And so,
A lot. Yeah.
the story is Moses, after this edict by Pharaoh, his mama knew he had a call on his life. He was a special child. Not every mother thinks her child is special, but they knew he had a call on his life. I don't know if they had a prophetic word, but they had a word. And so they put him in this little reed basket that had been pitched inside and out, and they set him adrift in the Nile, and lo and behold, he drifts by an area where there is Pharaoh's daughter and her entourage. She rescues the baby. She has heart for the baby. She searches for a wet nurse, and Miriam, Moses' sister, had followed the basket. And so they approached her, looked for they knew it was a Hebrew baby, looked for a Jewish midwife to take and wet nurse this baby, and lo and behold, for the next 3 years there is Moses' mama. So then Josephus kind of begins to fill in the blanks. And at 3 years of age, Moses was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. He was given a royal education, and he became great in the land of Egypt. In the book of Antiquities 1, chapter 10, verse 1, he becomes a great general in the Egyptian army. He actually lays siege to cities. One city capitulates. Part of the capitulating is the king of that city, Moses actually marries his daughter, a princess. And as we read in Acts, he became a man of power in word and deed. Let's go back to Acts. We're going to pick it up. We're going to read 23 through 29.
What chapter?
Acts 7. Back to Acts 7. Verses 23 through 29. We read 22, so here we go. And when he was approaching the age of 40, it entered into his mind. This was a God thing, okay? It entered into his mind to visit his brother, the Hebrews. He knew his roots. The sons of Israel, it said. And when he saw one of them being treated unjustly, in verse 24, he defended him and took vengeance for the oppressed by striking down the Egyptian. And he supposed that his brother understood. He just supposed, man, they're going to be really thrilled about this thing. That God was granting them deliverance through him. This prince. This man mighty in word, power, and deed. This educated man. But they didn't understand. I mean, to them, he was just an Egyptian. Probably heard about it. Verse 26, and on the following day he appeared to them, and they were fighting together, and he tried to reconcile them in peace, saying, "Men, you're brethren. Why do you injure one another?" Verse 27, but the one who was injuring his neighbor pushed him away, saying, "Who made you a ruler and judge over us? You did not mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday, do you?" And verse 29 says, and at this remark, Moses, he got afraid. He fled. He knew that the word was out. It wasn't mum as the word. There was no convict's code. And he became an alien, a convict on the run. Became an alien in the land of Midian. He fled to the land of Midian, where he became the father of 2 sons. He would ultimately marry a Cushite woman. He'd marry what was considered to be a black woman. That's what he'd marry. And he would have 2 sons. So God tells us in verse 23 that he brought this thing to remembrance, that word that he had received from the Lord. And he was already popular. He wasn't, according to Josephus, he was popular with both Egyptians and the Hebrew, and he tried to actually please them both. And he probably thought at this moment, okay, it came to my mind, you know, I am on the rise politically. I'm a great general. I've had successful campaigns, military campaigns, a little more power. And what I'm actually going to be able to do, excuse me, is I'm going to be able to take and set my people free. We'll overthrow these Egyptians. We'll kill them just like I killed this guy, okay? We'll overthrow them. And he probably said to himself, I'm ready, God. I'm ready. Huh? Can you hear it?
Yep.
I can hear it. And he thought the Hebrew people will believe that God was working through him to rescue them. And so at this moment, he takes things into his own hands. We do that a lot, don't we? We take things into our own hands and we try to make them happen.
Yep, that's right.
I'm ready. Aren't you ready? I'm going to take it. I'm going to take these things in my hand, and I will push that door open. I've heard the word that God has spoken over my life, and I'm ready.
It must be now.
This must be now. Pharaoh found out. See, they were already, according to Josephus, they were already very fearful of him because he was popular. And this gave Pharaoh the ammunition he needed to get rid of Moses, to get rid of the political opposition. I can get rid of him know what happened. I don't know if all of a sudden Moses found out there was a warrant for his arrest. His picture went up down at the post office. It was on the 6 o'clock news, so to speak, kind of a thing. But he got afraid and he ran. And he left his wife, his first wife, that princess. He left his mama and his brother and sister, and he fled. And he became a fugitive. Wow. Gloom, despair, and agony on me. My life is over. I'm just going to eat worms. Little did he know that God was actually working through his circumstances to continue training and shaping him. He was nowhere near ready to fulfill his destiny, his purpose. He would actually become the very thing that the Egyptians despised. You know what the Egyptians despised, if you read historically? If you just go back even into the book of Genesis, you know what they despised? Shepherds. They despised them. How many of you aspire to be the garbage collector, work for Dirty Boys? Raise your hand. You know, you see Dirty Boys' truck running around town. Is that what you aspire to be, man? You know what I want to grow up to be? I want to ride that garbage truck around Rollins, Wyoming and work for Dirty Boys. They hated shepherds, and he became a shepherd. And instead of leading armies, he was leading fragile sheep. You lead sheep. You don't drive them. You have cattle drives, but you lead sheep. Instead of being a great orator to thousands as he once had been, his audience was those sheep. Have you ever roamed around Wyoming and see one of those basques out there with their little camp and all them sheep? That was his audience. When he left Egypt on the run, I'm sure it was not his aspiration to be a shepherd. He still kind of believed, I am the chosen one. I have a call. I have an anointing. But I think as time passed, his illusion of grandeur kind of began to fade. And you know the trouble with that? There was no open door to go back. Ever been there?
Yep.
Oh, you can, amen. You know, this is how it once was. This is what I had where I lived, and this is what I done. But that door was closed, and he could not go back. And when he looked into the night skies, he's there with those sheep. Imagine he contemplated that word that he had from the Lord. Wow, this is a word that my parents had given me. Quiet, all alone, the starry night, trying to wrap his brain around it. This is what was spoken over me. And every once in a while, he probably saw a caravan going back to Egypt. You probably wonder, where's my little princess wife? I wonder what Mom and Dad are. Now that they were slaves, are they still alive? My brother, my sister, are they still alive? Could you feel the year? I mean, there was no DIA. You catch a flight in an hour and a half, you're somewhere, right? And don't you know that Moses prayed? I believe with all of my heart he prayed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And his prayer centered around probably his destiny. God, the word spoken over me would be that I am going to be the deliverer for your people, my people. And I can imagine the range of emotion. I don't understand what has happened to me. Why?
Yep.
Why has this happened?
Mm-hmm. We've all asked it.
Probably had days that he felt kind of angry at God. You ever have those days?
Yep.
Why has this happened? I don't understand. It seems like things have just went from bad to worse. As we read, eventually he remarries. He marries the Cushite woman. And he has a brand new family. And weeks turn into months, and months turn into years. And he probably came to this conclusion, I'm never really going to be great. That was all just something in my mind. Ever wonder about the words spoken over your life? And I think maybe after a given period of time, he just kind of resigned himself to his situation. You ever been there? Exodus 2:21, please. It says, and Moses was willing to dwell with the man, and he gave him his daughter Zipporah to Moses. The NIV says agreed. My translation says was. A better word is actually he became. I remember when the family first moved to Wyoming, we came from, even though I'm born in Colorado, we came from California. That's culture shock. I mean, you live down there, you got Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, Universal Studios, you got the ocean, you got beautiful malls. You know what I mean? You got restaurants they haven't even heard of up here. And you move here to Rawlins, Wyoming. Huh?
Woohoo!
Man, you got Denny's, you know, Cappy's.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord. You had to grow. My dad and Robin's dad for 2 years hated this place. Hated it. And then you kind of got in this groove. Man, it's the outdoor stuff. We had a wonderful time at the lake. Pretty soon you're camping and fishing. And you really, after a while, it's kind of like, wow, we had a big traffic thing today here in Rawlins. I had to wait for 3 cars to pass. You know. We went back to California, and down there in LA, it's 6 lanes of traffic on each side. There's 12 lanes of traffic, and you're driving bumper to bumper. It's like, whoa. And so Moses became willing.
Yes.
My dad and Robin's dad became willing to live in Rawlins. Moses became willing. Have you ever just gave up? Good. Got a word for you. Good. You give up? Good. You ever just surrender to your circumstance, your situation? Good. I mean, it's good. Honestly, can you imagine everything he learned in those 40 years? Do you know 40 years is a long time? Some of them guys, and I've shared this before, you know, they get a 20-year sentence. And people say, they only gave you 20 years. 20 years is a lifetime. 20 years, if you have a baby, they're in college. In 20 years, you have a baby, you know, they're married and got another kid. 20 years, you retire from the post office. 20 years, you pay for a house. 40 years is a long time. What did he learn? Well, he was this man that was educated, right?
Yep.
Powerful in word and deed, full of himself. He slew a man. Well, I think he learned how to be gentle and caring. He learned how to herd sheep, that you have to lead them, and that was going to be good because he was ultimately going to have to shepherd 2 million people.
Yep.
But even more importantly than that, Moses learned that all of his knowledge, all of his abilities, all of his talent, had not gotten him greatness or wealth. Well, that applies in our culture today, doesn't it? See, our culture tells you we worship, first of all, we worship the God of success in this nation. That's why we have these, the Academy Awards, a bunch of derelict, deadbeat, drunks, dope fiends. I mean, the rap star just died this week, 26 years of age. Anybody want to make probably a guess of how he died? Huh? Probably drugs, probably over. I mean, we worship the God of success. He had to learn that all his knowledge, his education, raised in this royal household, this is who my daddy is, had not gotten him wealth or greatness. Actually, trusting himself had only done what? It had brought him headache and heartache. Let's go to Proverbs, the 14th chapter, verse 12. Check this out. Proverbs 14:12. There is a way that seems right to a man. Man, there's a race. It includes you girls. There's a way that seems right to a man or woman. But the end thereof, but its end is the way of death. A 26-year-old rap star, huh? Dead. There's a way that seems right. Greatness, wealth, fame. Kind of amazing. You know that God used Moses' own bad choices? Huh? Do you know that?
Yep.
He uses your bad choices. He does. Rick and I have had some conversations about this. He uses your funky old bad choices to do what? To humble you and teach you lessons in life that you would learn no other way. And that's just the truth. You know what's wrong with our nation? We have leadership in our nation that have come from the upper crust, who've never worked hardly an honest day in their life, and are trying to lead our nation. His stuff was in the Rollins newspaper. He had an ice cream social down at the Hampton Inn because he could buy it. There were some really good candidates that have come up through the school of hard knocks that didn't have a snowball chance in Hades. So God would use his bad choices to teach him some amazing lessons over those 40 years. And Moses would learn this: true greatness only comes from God. You know what the word says? Promotion comes from the Lord.
Yes, that's true. That's right.
I didn't get it. Promotion comes from the Lord. It came with it. Promotion comes from the Lord. Zechariah 6 says, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Wow. You know the word says the meek are going to inherit the earth.
Yep.
Have you thought about that one? The meek are literally going to inherit the earth. There's coming a day, and it's not far away. The meek are going to inherit the earth. A beautiful oak mountain you can't even get to. You don't used to have access to that old mountain. I drove up that one road. You used to have forestry signs, and you could go up there. You could picnic up there with your family. What they had was a guy that owned one of them NFL football teams. He bought all the property around that thing. Fought a great big old court battle with the hunters and the fishermen, and of course he was going to win. You think he wouldn't? Now you can't go up there no more. The Bible says the meek are ultimately going to inherit the earth. Consider Moses 40 years earlier. Yes, let's make those Egyptians pay for what they have done to us, right? I killed one, let's just kill them all. But Moses' outlook had completely changed. And he finally realized, you know, it's not about me. And you know, I hear God saying, here's Moses, he's 80 years old now. He's 80. He's 80, guys. And I hear God saying, you're finally ready. You are finally ready. Let's go. Never too late in your life.
That's right.
Jesus' ministry was the last 3 years of his life. Moses would be 80. God would give him another 40. And he'd be a great leader.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what must have been going on through his mind as he's journeying back to Egypt? He's probably thinking, wow, I remember the times with my mom and my sister and my brother. I wonder again if they're still alive. And chills must have went up and down his back as he thought, wow, that word that God gave me those many years ago when I was just a boy, God's word to me was a fact. It was truth. I did have a destiny. He did have a plan for my life. And now instead of thinking of himself as somebody important, young and virile, dressed in his linen, his manicured hair,
All the answers.
you know, with all the answers in life. Moses knew, I need God.
Yeah,
It's not the same Moses returning.
that's right.
Let's go to Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. Trust. You know what our biggest problem is? Right here, first word. Trust. Oh, I trust him. No, you don't. I say, you lying dog. No, you don't. You wouldn't be having your meltdown. You wouldn't be throwing your fit. You wouldn't be crying in great big old crocodile tears. You wouldn't be planning something crazy or nuts. Trust in the Lord with all your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Do not lean on your own understanding. Do not lean on your own understanding. Next verse. In all your ways acknowledge Him. He'll make your path straight.
Yep.
He'll get rid of all the crooked places in your life. Israel wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. It was a 3-month journey on foot. That's not very long. 3 months, not years, 3 months, 40 years. They wandered because they didn't trust. They didn't enter into that rest. We went and watched that little movie last night with our granddaughter, Christopher Robbins. It's
Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh. That was a cute movie. Go see it. It's good for adults and kids. At the end, Christopher Robbins and Winnie the Pooh, they're sitting on this log. And one of them says, "What day is it?" And the other one said, "It's today." And then the other one said, "Oh, that's my favorite day." Huh? That was actually biblical. This is the day the Lord has made. Psalms 118, verse 24. This is the day the Lord has made. Just rejoice and be glad in it. Rest. Enjoy the journey. Trust. Don't wander for 40 years in the wilderness. It'll only take you a few months. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. Interesting, after this experience, whenever God talks to Moses and tells him to do something, you know what the Word always says? And Moses did as he was commanded. Something had happened. Every time God said to him, "Moses, hard or easy, do it." He did as he was commanded. Yes, sir. No more taking things in his own hands. No more trying to push open his own doors. No more trying to make things happen in the flesh. He simply learned to follow God's lead, and he learned to trust.
Yep. Absolutely.
He never killed another Egyptian. Do you know that? He didn't have to fire a shot. God would take care of it all.
Yep.
And even when, at the end, Pharaoh's armies, this world power of its day, with all their chariots and horses, pursued Israel, God took care of it.
That's right.
The horse and the rider has he thrown into the sea.
Yeah.
Huh? And they danced on the other side of the sea. God had taken care of their enemies.
That's right.
Humility, meekness carried him far in the kingdom of God. Do you know that when his leadership was challenged, you know what Moses did? Huh? He didn't say, "Don't you know who I am? How dare you challenge my leadership?" It says he prostrated himself before the Lord. That's what it says. He didn't lash out. And he let God work it out. He even prayed for his accusers. He interceded for them.
Yep.
We shared some of that last time I preached. Something had happened in his heart. It says that Jesus looked up at the crowds and his heart was moved with compassion. That became Moses.
Yep.
He became not only this meek and gentle man, but a great shepherd of the sheep. Gentle and caring. Moses loved the people. He interceded for the people over and over. Those whom God had placed in his care. And he was never too busy to handle their problems. In fact, his father-in-law came to him and said, "Moses, you can't do this all on your own. Appoint." And so he had to delegate some authority. He always had time for the people. He didn't have selfish ambition no more. He wasn't looking for his name on the marquee. He wasn't looking to become rich and famous. he had truly become a man that God can trust. That's what God wants out of each one of us.
That's
He
right.
wants you to become a woman or a man that he can trust.
Yeah.
A man that, or a woman that if he gave you incredible finances, he could trust you.
Yep.
A man or a woman that if he gave you an incredible position of leadership or power, he could trust you. If he gave you a ministry and signs and wonders followed your ministry, he could trust you. Why was he called the meekest man that ever lived? The most humble man? I think we've answered that, guys. Why was he a humble, gentle man? I think we've answered that. It was the journey. It was the lessons that he learned in that journey. Any of you feel like you're on a journey? You had the word spoken over your life. You haven't seen the fruition of it. At times you wonder, it was all just a lie. I remember Rick and Joy. 9 years waiting for that baby, wasn't it?
Okay.
I remember right here, in this church, right here, where a word was spoken over them, they'd have a child. And the word also said children. And it never happened. Right? Never happened. And well, I wonder what that really means. Could it mean that, okay, spiritual children?
Yeah, there you go.
Huh? Somehow you're trying to rationalize this thing. Maybe that was just an off word that day, That really wasn't God. And then all of a sudden here comes Noah. Boom. And now all of a sudden we're going to have another baby. Huh?
Yeah.
Boom. Because of his humility, God was able to use Moses powerfully. Do you know that God used him to write the first 5 books of Moses? Every Hebrew child had to memorize by heart the first 5 books of Moses. Every king had to be able to quote the first 5 books of Moses. God would use him as a prophet. God would use him as a type of Christ. At Jesus' transfiguration, who was there? There were Peter, James, and John. But who was there? Moses and Elijah. At Jesus' transfiguration, where Jesus reveals his splendor, and the Father speaks, there's Moses. God would use him to lead 2 million people out of captivity. God would speak to Moses face to face as a friend. God would show him a portion of his glory. Wow. Not before that 40 years in the wilderness. Not before. Not when he was young and virile. After what he went through. When he wore probably cotton clothes and homemade sandals. His hands and his face probably grizzled from years in the sun. The white hair and the white beard. No fancy manicure, pedicure, or hairstyle. No elegant aftershave or cologne. Wow. Let's go to Isaiah 57:15. Get ready to close. We're going to have communion. Isaiah 57:15. For thus says the high and lofty one. The high and exalted one, who lives forever, whose name is holy. I dwell in a high and holy place. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Creator of the universe. But I dwell also. Who does he dwell with? The contrite, the lowly of spirit, in order to revive the spirit of the lowly and to revive the heart of the contrite. Isaiah 66:2. We'll read 1 and 2. Isaiah 66:1 and 2. Thus says the Lord, heaven is my throne. I was reading last night. You know what his throne is made out of? Sapphire is the second hardest mineral on earth. First is diamond. Sapphire is formed under great pressure and heat, under fire. It's one of the foundation stones in our future home. Heaven is my throne. The earth is my footstool. Where then is the house you would build for me? Huh?
Yes.
And where is the place that I may rest? The Word says, don't you know that you are the temple of the Holy Spirit? I dwell in you. I dwell in the contrite and the broken of heart. He says, my hands made all these things. Thus all these things came into being, declares the Lord. But to this one I look. God's looking his eye.
Yes.
He's searching throughout the earth. This is who his eye is on this morning. To him, to her, who is humble, in contrite of spirit, who trembles at my word. Wow. Hallelujah. Wow. Let that resonate in your spirit as we close, get ready to close. I imagine there was a lot of his journey he didn't understand. I'm sure he tried to figure it out like all of us. And I know he tried to pray away a lot of things. Just like all of us. I would pray away everything in my life if I could with you. Bless me, bless mine, bless us. In hindsight, I think Moses looked back and saw all the years that God worked with him. Even when he wasn't even aware of it. Some of you are not aware that God's at work in your life right now. I'm telling you the truth, church. He's at work in your life right now. You're thinking, where are you? Heaven, you seem like you're made of brass. Don't you know that this sucks? Don't you know that I hurt? All those years of you ever been around sheep, by the way? They stink. I think that's probably why the Egyptians didn't like them. They stink. Ever went to one of them big dairies and smelled Huh? I don't know how the people live there. I mean, they got mountains of food, huh? The cattle out there waiting in it. I'm thinking, oh, how do you have to eat green grass, wait and all that stuff, and give me white milk? You know? He tended sheep. He's a man on the run. You know what he learned? As he looked back, wow, God's faithful.
Yes.
God's faithful. He's faithful. He's been faithful to every one of you. That's the absolute truth. He's been faithful. You ever looked at a tapestry, the backside of it, by any chance? Huh? You ever looked on the backside of the tapestry? It's ugly on the backside, isn't it? It's just knots and strings. I mean, you look at the backside of the tapestry and you're like, what's that? And then you turn that tapestry around, you know what I mean? And you're like in awe. Isn't that beautiful? My scripture, you've heard it a million times, Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I'm planning for you, saith God. Plans of welfare and not of calamity, that I might give you a future and a hope. Just like Moses, God has a plan for our lives. And one day, we'll look back and we'll say, He was sure faithful in my life.
Yep.
Even before I knew Him. Huh? I want you to take heart. I researched all this. At the time, I ain't going to give you the scriptures. You can research it. Moses made mistakes. It's there. Read it. Moses became discouraged. Read it. It's there. He wasn't Superman. He didn't have a cape. He was like you and I. Moses sometimes doubted God. Read it. It's there. Sometimes he doubted his calling. Read it. It's there. Sometimes Moses even limited God. Read it. It's there. But ultimately he learned God will never forsake us. He will never leave us. You won't have the sheriff knocking on your door and saying, Mr. Ridgway, here's the divorce papers from God. He will never leave me. He will never forsake me. His word says that even when I am unfaithful, He's faithful.
That's right.
The word says that the work that He started in my life,
He will finish.
He will finish. He will finish it.
That's right.
The work He started in Moses' life, He would finish.
That's right.
Moses learned to trust. That's the word I speak over this church family today. You got to learn to trust. I don't know what you're going through right now, but you got to learn to trust.
That's right.
You got to learn to trust. You got to learn to trust. That was his indictment against the disciples in that boat that day on the Sea of Galilee. The Father said, we're going to the other side. Don't you care that we perish, Jesus? Could you just go rest? Could you just trust?
You don't have to worry or manipulate.
Don't have to worry. Don't have to manipulate. Don't have to try to open your own door and then get mad when you don't open it. Trust.
Yes.
God loves you.
He's got it.
He's got it. As I close, we take communion. This is the truth. Historically, search it out. For men could gather and start getting this ready. Rarely, if ever, does God use a man or woman who's not been through the wilderness. Rarely, if ever. Hollywood has one-night wonders. Some of the singers are they're one-song wonders. I don't forget what they call them.
One-hit wonder.
One-hit wonders? Yeah, one-hit wonders. Boom! And it's a hot song for
The moment.
3 or 4 months. And then they're trying to duplicate the songs. And it's not till they've had a wilderness experience and come back that they finally got some music to them. God's men and women all go through the wilderness. All. We're going to rule and reign as kings and priests. How do you think that's going to happen? Huh? How do you think you're going to get qualified? How do you think you're going to grow and mature? How do you think you're going to have compassion? How do you think you're going to love people? How do you think you're going to keep from the enemy dangling a great big old fat carrot in front of you? You go chase him off like a little old rabbit somewhere on another trail. Huh? Takes you through the wilderness. So that then every time he speaks to you, like Moses, they will say, everything the Lord commanded them to do, they did.